Good morning, sir.
Oh yeah. Do we have our fancy thingy?
Yeah,
Oh, there it
right
is.
here.
Make it clear to me. Show that on my screen.
There we are.
Okay.
So I woke up this morning to a cool message from you saying, I want to rant like a grumpy old man tomorrow. It's not exactly what you said, but
That was your interpretation of it.
not even.
Uh,
It's interesting that the more I find that for a lot of things, I found that the older that I got, the more shades of gray there seemed to be in life. Like there was less black and white. I saw a lot more nuance in life. And then also as I get further and further into dad life, into fatherhood, the more and more there's black and whites.
mm,
Like there's hard lines now. There's stuff where there was a little bit more nuance when there was just me in the world. But now when it comes to my kids, it's like, no, there's some things, and then there's also some things that become more nuanced. I find it really fascinating.
yeah. Right. Yeah, I can relate. Yeah, I feel like back in maybe early teens, I can remember being like, boom, this is the way. Like I thought I had it all figured out. You think things are so clear. You think things are so black and white. And you can get pretty strongly opinion. Well, at least me, I was very strongly opinionated, but with really nothing behind that, like with really no experience in the world, no way to back that up. But
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was so clear on things then.
Yep.
But yeah, as the older we get, right, I find that just like I mean, at least I realize the amount that I don't know. And then I just find that just incredibly humbling because it's like, oh, like I have no idea really. Like
Mm-hmm.
I think I know some of these things and I have an opinion on them, but do I actually have any idea? Not, I don't know.
Do you remember a time where you switched or things kind of changed from you seeing your parents as like your parents, your mom and dad, who were not necessarily infallible, but they were like, they were like this different kind of thing. Like they were like your
Mm.
parents, and then all of a sudden you got to an age where you're like, oh, like they're just like me. They're just humans. They're just people. They're not parents. Like like do you remember a time like that?
I don't know. I mean, I get maybe like it's tough with memory, right? If I'm just gonna make this up or not. But it was probably like I don't totally remember that being like an aha moment, but I do think like university where I was in an environment like I joined a fraternity and I can remember like there being a lot more, a lot of older guys around that I started to look up to and I started to get mentoring from. And, that's the stage where I'm now away from home a lot more. So I feel
Mm-hmm.
like those were probably the years of starting to realize that where I was getting more parented than I was parented, perhaps.
Right. Pure intent. I like that.
Which I know, yeah, that's the thing. I know I've heard about that where if that happens too early, that's a problem.
Uh-huh.
Especially now with social media, if our kids can become and if if their parents aren't around, if they're getting parented too early, that's gonna be a problem.
Right. Right. Yeah. So what's the rant that you want to go on today? I'm
Well,
fascinated by
there's
this.
there's two. And I know we don't typically get very political, although, sometimes we've had some segues and we've brought up some stuff that's relevant in the world right now to kind of maybe help with context for what we're talking about. The one I did have an epiphany yesterday, and I was talking to a friend about, this whole TikTok banning situation,
Mm-hmm.
and which is already, there are precedents, right? The Indian government banned it. It has been banned within government organizations. Like I think there's some of the government in the EU that's banned it. I
Oh,
think
okay.
even maybe our Canadian government might have banned it. I don't know. But anyways, the US, I think gave them, I think it was in April, they started a motion and TikTok had until like right about now to sell their US entity and or leave the country. Have you been following this at all?
A little bit, yeah. That, yeah. So the whatever American subsidiary, is it ByteDance?
Yeah. Or yeah, that's I don't know if that's the American subsidiary, but that is a subsidiary that owns TikTok. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that because the app, or because anything that's made, or any company in China is linked, is like not just linked, but they are essentially an arm of the government over there. So that the idea that I understand is that anything that is, when you're dealing with a Chinese company, you're not just dealing with a Chinese company, you're dealing with the government, and that government has been known to hoover up information on people all over the world and are not very discriminate about that. That's kind of the
Yeah.
extent of the what I understand of it from it.
Yeah, I think that's the sort of general view that's being put out there of the situation. Um, but I don't, I don't know for sure, right? Like I'm not in China and I don't work for the government and I don't know what's actually happening over there. What I do know is I just felt like it was quite, um, how can I put this? Talking about it yesterday, all of a sudden it dawned on me like, oh, there's a very interesting parallel here. Whether or not it's a true parallel or not, it just, if I'm giving a history lesson for our grandkids, which was how we started this channel in the first place, kids, there was a time 83 years ago now, when there was a certain Asian population here in North America that got labeled as spies by the business community and had everything they owned taken away from them and were not just put in camps, but then asked to leave the country,
This is the
at least here in
Japanese.
Canada. The Japanese, my half of my ancestry. This is what happened in 1942. The government said it was because they were spies and they were worried about them, and it was World War II, and the Japanese had just bombed Pearl Harbor. And so the public facing view was Japanese are spies. They don't belong here anymore. They need to go away. And as punishment, we're going to sell all their stuff. And especially here in Canada and British Columbia, they weren't allowed to return to where they came from, the land that they had, even though it wasn't there anymore. They were asked to then they were exiled either back to Japan or out east. And so I just thought, oh, isn't that interesting? Here we are 83 years later, and we have a different Asian population. Well, a government owned, not a government, a company from China, and they are getting labeled as spying on the Americans. And there's discussion here in Canada as well. So this company is getting labeled as spying on the population here, and they're being asked to leave,
Mm.
or sell to an American company. And I just thought, isn't that interesting? It just seems very similar situation. Um, so, anyways, that was my history lesson. That sometimes things can repeat and just is it true? Have we learned our history lesson from the past? Are we doing the same things all over again?
Right. Interesting.
There's some funny, I just saw some of these last night. There's some funny videos that TikTokers are now producing because, TikTok does have an interesting algorithm. Like when TikTok first started, it was all about education. My kids and I were on there, I don't know how long ago now. I think my first video posted might have been like 7 years ago. And back then, you could actually put a link on your video. And the
Hmm.
only link though that you were allowed to insert was a Wikipedia link. Like
Oh,
it's
interesting.
grounded in education.
Hmm.
And in the United States, there's, I don't know what the numbers are, hundreds of thousands of TikTok content creators that are doing very well for themselves as a business. And the interesting thing also about the TikTok algorithm is it is far more, and this is what I understand, it's far more tuned to the user and what they want to see. And the algorithm will give them that, and the audience will give the creator far more exposure if users like their content. Like it's far more easier to go viral on TikTok. And I mean, I've seen this with just my own content in a very limited, anecdotal example is I'll get 3 times on average more views from my content on TikTok than will, I'll say, on Instagram. Same video. So there's a lot of interesting things about the platform, about the algorithm, the fact that there is a lot more free speech. There is a lot more content that can get to a lot more people a lot quicker, and that it is far more tuned to the end user's preferences versus the platform's preferences of you need to pay to get this many eyeballs and this much attention.
Right. Right. Gotcha. And do you know if the that algorithm is still so? I guess what I had heard was that was absolutely the case when it was first. Well, way back when, let's say when you're talking about 7 years ago or so, when you first started posting, to now, like I've heard that there's differences in the algorithm that's used in our population here versus, say, the Chinese population, and that in China it still is very much so based on like more education based, that it's trying to educate its population, and they have a lot more strict rules on when it can be used, how it can be used versus here. And I think maybe for some people, and again, I'm just on the perimeter of this because
Sure, yeah.
I have so much other shit that I need to think about. That like TikTok, I'm not even on. I mean, I've attempted to go on TikTok like a handful of
Right.
times. I don't have it on my phone anymore. I only see about half of the videos that people send me because I have to click on the link and it brings me online. And sometimes I can see the video, and sometimes it tells me I have to download the app, so I don't even watch it. But yeah, it from what I've heard is that that seems to be, or that is the case now versus what it may have been before.
Yeah. I don't have I'm sure someone could go and validate this pretty easily, right? If you grabbed the Chinese phone and you grabbed your American phone and looked at the algorithm and tested it with different videos. I haven't done that. I'm sure someone's done that before. I guess what I'm looking at this also as a dad, because both my kids use it more than they do other platforms for content. And I, so I do have a personal bias. Just to respond to what you said there, I don't know. And my hypothesis is that sure, there probably is some more restrictions in China about what you can post. I also think that my theory is that it is the same algorithm. It's just tuning though to what the population is looking for. And so if you've got a population of people here in North America that's looking for, you know, car crash videos or, I don't know
Right.
what, there's stuff on there that isn't ideal for perhaps young people to watch. But if that's what people are looking for and the algorithm is tuned to giving them what they're looking for and people creating content for what people are looking for, then it's the people that are taking it a certain direction, not the algorithm saying this is what you want, you should watch. Do
Hmm.
so I've heard that thought in terms of just, is it that other places people and their kids are looking for different things and looking at different things, therefore that's the content that they see. It's just kind of
Yeah.
this whole, we will make up whatever reality we want.
Right. Well, although it doesn't seem that the algorithm itself is what the problem is, that
Mm,
people are saying why there's a ban in the U.S. It's about how they use their information. I
potentially,
guess the data
potentially, yeah.
that they gather. Granted, I was thinking about it, and again, I have I'm not someone to listen to about this, but it would seem like, well, the American companies are doing the exact same thing with their own data.
Do we
Like they're
trust Facebook anymore with our data or Google?
right, exactly.
I
And
mean, their track record's been spotty with protecting people's personal information.
yeah, and even here in Canada, like how I don't understand, like how did, because this is not too long ago for us, that here in Canada, because of people who supported a protest movement here in Canada, there was the trucker movement, the trucker convoy that happened, that not only the truckers that were involved, but people who financially donated to that cause had their bank accounts frozen.
Frozen.
Like, that's insane. So
Yet,
somehow our government was able to get the information to the banks, link up that information, find out who these people were, and have their bank accounts frozen. Like, that is insane. I don't understand why people are not still talking about this. Like, why people, first of all, why they didn't really talk about it back then. I mean, I get it a little bit more then. We were all frozen in this kind of state of paralysis of the insane that was happening. But like, that's happening in Canada. And it seems as though we potentially are projecting all this stuff on China, which, granted, the stuff that they have going on is, there's so much that I don't agree with, but also, like, the stuff here is a bunch of bullshit that I don't agree with either. And I think that for me, some of the overarching things that I see with a lot of this stuff, and part of the reason I haven't really engaged in it, is that I can't control it. Like, it's well beyond my pay grade in terms of understanding. And if I allowed myself to go into that, it would suck all of my time and all of my energy and all of my resources and all of my potential to have an influence on the things that I can control. Like, there's the old saying, I'm paraphrasing, like, from AA. They said that, God grant me the wisdom to change the things that I can, and what was it? Change the things that I can control.
yeah.
I don't even know what it is.
But I know what you
like,
mean.
all the things that I
Yes.
can't, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Yes, I got you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it's good. You went on a little bit of a rant there too. That's good. That's just two grumpy guys here in the morning going, we got our own show. We got people that may or may not watch this. So hey, guess what? We get to talk about what we want to talk about right now. And you're right. Like, I find it fascinating because this has been a whole past year. Last year was so much about projection. And here you've got, the Canadian government saying, "Oh, they're the dictators." Yet somehow they're allowed to freeze, look into transactions and freeze people's bank accounts. Like, that is ridiculous. And it's still being talked about in certain circles, right? This is one of the promises of, this is maybe my next rant, is just around, cryptocurrency technology. Is it gives you the opportunity to become your own bank, where you don't have to be subject to things that are out of your control. It's far more empowering. Like, I hear your big message there too around, like, what can I control? Well, I can control my money. That's my money. I earned it, right? I can decide if I want to give it to a bank that the government has the opportunity to come and seize it at any time. I can give it to a bank that may or may not be doing things the way I would agree with, and may or may not have my money when I decide to go and get it. That's a conversation. I can control right now my thoughts and my opinions, and the fact that we do have something that we can send out to people that talks about the situation with, say, TikTok, in that you do have the business community in the United States lobbying the government, saying these guys are a threat to us. TikTok is a threat to Facebook. Let's just be clear here, right? And to X, and to, is there anything else? Snap, not really Snap. It is a threat. I would imagine if you looked at engagement scores, if you looked at retention, if you looked at the growth of usership, I mean, I think it's 180 million monthly active users on TikTok right now in the United States. I would imagine that the business community in the United States that is competing with TikTok has been concerned. I think it's also ironic that Mark Zuckerberg just put out a video about, trying to make himself look like the good guy, about removing restrictions and trying to be more of a free speech platform. And I just think this ironic that came out at almost the exact same time, even though as I listened to him and he talks about why he started social media to create more community and more engagement. And I was like, really? I thought you started your first social media platform to rate girls that were hot at Harvard. Isn't that interesting? Just like, that was his first thing that he said. And I was like, you lost me. I'm sorry. Everything after this, I don't believe. Let's just go back and look up history here. And Anyways, this is not what we normally talk about, but I personally, given how much I've learned in the past year about double standards, about hypocrisy, about projection, and about just what actually has happened in some of these situations. And it was 1942. The business community for a long time threatened by some people that had come here and were doing quite well. Like my ancestors had half a sawmill, grocery stores. They were building an apartment building. They'd already built another one that they were renting out. Like they were doing great here. They had been here for 40 years. They were doing
Hmm.
great. And some of them had fishing fleets and all kinds of stuff, right? Lumber, food, fishing. Like they were doing great. And similar with TikTok, TikTok came here. It's doing great. People love it. I like it. It as a technology platform, as someone who, took computer engineering in university, TikTok I way prefer to use and I way prefer to create content on it. They've done some phenomenal things that allows me to create content on it. So I don't need to use a separate video editing app. I will create my content on it. I will post it to TikTok and then I will download that video and post it to Instagram. So TikTok does give me a lot of value. It gives me a lot more people that want to look at that content. It allows me to create it much more easier. I'm not worried about the Chinese government learning that I like to go for hikes in the woods. Like, I'm not, so there are some funny videos right now of people saying goodbye on TikTok, and there are some people, that are Chinese saying, "Hi there, I'm your Chinese spy." And then, anyways, you got to see some of these videos. They're funny. Like, Alex, you really should break up with your, boyfriend, and because it's pretending like they actually know these things that are going on in people's conversations here in the United States.
Yeah, right.
It is. I just think, I don't know, right? I have no idea. I'm not in these rooms. I'm not in the Chinese government, but I just think it's interesting how much of a parallel it is from something that I have in my own story, in my own ancestry, to what's going on today, 83 years later. That's all.
Right. I mean, what do you think let's say for our kids, like what do you think is the concern then if this happens or not? I mean, there's a lot of concern with our kids getting on social media and our kids like. So one of the things I've been obsessed with this guy named Chase Hughes over the last week and a
Okay.
half. I've known him for the last handful of years, but I have not really dove into his content until about the last week. He was on a couple podcasts that I listened to, and funny enough, he has an online course that I had downloaded, or not downloaded, but I have access to from like a handful of years ago that I've never really even accessed, which is fun. I
I
found
have
funny.
a
I was
few.
like, oh, I should go look up this guy's stuff. I'm like, oh wait, I already have access to one of his courses. But anyways, he's like a behavioral specialist. Used to be in the I don't know what division or whatever, but he was like in the armed forces in the U.S. He was
Yeah.
super highly trained, one of the top experts in persuasion, influence. He'd be people that like who do interrogations. He was like an interrogation expert, and he's like a body language expert. So like he's one of the guys that he now consults with different companies and branches of the government when it comes to like foreign affairs with interrogation and things like that. Like the guy is like he's one of the world's best in that, and so he now puts out a lot of content about not only how to spot people when they're lies and deception
Okay.
and how
Hmm.
to influence and things like that, like if you're trying to not only for government and interrogation stuff, but also like how we can apply those principles to the business world and our personal lives, like things like that.
Hmm.
And it's fascinating. And he's like, I'm an expert in behavioral sciences and things like that. He's like, and he was saying, social media scares the crap out of me. He said,
Hmm.
because I get sucked in. He's like, I know all the tricks. I know all the tools. I have the skills to be able to persuade and influence people. He's like, and I get sucked into this. And he was talking about some stuff about the algorithm, like that it'll show you, like how it shows you different things. Like it'll show you like like a cute dog video, another cute dog video, and then like a car crash video, and then another,
Right.
and then like the stuff that gets you hooked that is also the same thing that makes you suggestible.
Right.
And and he's saying that, yeah, he's bought so much stuff, so much BS stuff on, because of him just getting sucked into it. And he's like, at this point, it seems though like it's all to get you to consume and to buy, but that's also, from our standpoint. But if there's other more nefarious things at play from other entities around the world, that's also can be quite dangerous.
Right.
So, I think about like our kids, like I don't know, it just opens up this whole can of worms of like, what happened to us pre, like from the time of pre social media to now. And it's like, is that good, or is it bad, or is it just inevitable? Like, this is just what's happening. And I wonder about how much of what's happening is just like, we're just like, well, it's here, so like, why fight it? Like, we're just gonna go with it because we're kind of sucked into it ourselves. Or, I don't know. I don't have answers.
Yeah. Yes. So what I hear you saying though is social media really a good thing? You know, how do we let our kids use it? How do we let them use it? If it's that influential over someone who's an expert in manipulation and they get manipulated, then what's chance do our kids have? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, like, yeah, these algorithms are so sophisticated, and with AI, they're only going to get more
Sure.
sophisticated.
I guess, yeah. And I've encountered this conversation, like it came up last year on the pack that I'm on for my kids' school. And I do, so where I go with it is, and it's similar to maybe a couple other subjects similarly. I don't like personally the approach of I'm scared of it. I don't really understand it. I'm going to put that over there and I'm going to try and insulate my kids. I know that that's one approach that parents might take, right? Um, Personally, and I also don't take the approach of I don't understand it, but it's here. I'm going to just throw up my hands and here's your phone. That would be another approach that you see, right? A lot of the parents just is like, whatever, here's a phone. They're not even thinking about some of the stuff that we're talking about, right? So I feel like
Yeah.
those are different ends of some spectrums. I guess the approach I personally have taken, and I think it ultimately it comes down to like, look at your kids. Like, how are they doing? If they're struggling with school, if they're struggling with attention, if they're struggling with being present, if they're struggling with addiction patterns, if they're struggling with health, if they're struggling with, pursuing things that they love. I mean, you can see if there's a problem, like just check out your kid, right? Like if you're tuned into where they're at and it doesn't seem like they're exhibiting, behavior that's in their best interest, well, then, okay, then you start looking at, well, is there a problem here? But I also don't like to manufacture a problem if there's no problem, right? Like, so the approach personally that I've taken with social media, and there's a couple other things I can think of that are very similar, like food being another one, is to make sure I'm educated about it, that I'm using it, that I understand it, and then that I'm educated. Like I feel like the solution isn't hiding it. The solution isn't just giving up on it or giving up and just giving into it. For me, the solution is education, because for me, education creates empowerment,
Mm.
and it's not a screen time problem for me. Largely, it's a discipline problem. And so if kids, and I appreciate there's an age here, right? Like my 7-year-old has different abilities to be disciplined than my 15-year-old. So I think
Mhm.
there definitely I saw in there that we gave our 15-year-old access to TikTok a little early, and I could see there was behavioral problems where she
Mm.
was a little bit too revved up from the fast action content that she was seeing on her phone. So what did we do? Okay, that was too early. We're going to take TikTok off. You can do some of your other learning games and whatever else, Kids Messenger and stuff like that on there. But TikTok came off because it was too early. So that's fine. I could see the behavioral consequences of giving it to her too early. But then there became an age, and again, I think it's entirely kid appropriate, where I'm educating them, and it's no different about what's on YouTube. What's just on the internet, right? They can just go on and Google anything they want, anytime they want, from whoever's computer or whatever house they're at. Like, they do have access to a ridiculous amount of content that we probably, if we thought about it, they shouldn't have access to. And I remember when the first days of internet came out, the kind of stuff that I was looking at, right? So
Right.
to me, though, I can't hide them from that. I don't have the ability to do that. Like, they're going to get access to it. My only thing that the biggest thing I think I have control over is educating them and empowering them to understand what's good for them, understanding them what's possibly out there, understanding what could be happening in terms of people trying to manipulate them, algorithms that are trying to manipulate them. That to me is the best chance that I have of setting them up for success, is educating them around what these algorithms are actually doing, which I've done from the very beginning. And so that they know, oh yeah, Dad, I was on there for a while. Like, that got me hooked. Yeah, can you see what's happening there? Can you understand the psychology, that can you feel what's going on in your body? Does it feel good to be sitting there for an hour doing this? The best chance I have is education, and then also educating them around discipline, and like making sure that they have things that are more exciting in their real life than this.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like with those things in place, education, discipline, and something that they're passionate about pursuing, then they don't want to. I mean, they do sometimes, because they do need to unwind. Like, there is a lot that they're going through, whether it's in their sports or their school or just generally in life, friends. So I do. I mean, I'm on there a little bit, just as a little bit of a downtime. Like, it's no different than just we used to just stick on the TV and sit in front of it and watch, be blasted with ads and
Mm-hmm.
content. So I do think it's valuable for some downtime. And then yeah, so that's a rant around how I approach it. Education, empowerment, discipline, and having them and helping them find something that's far more exciting than this content online. And then so far, I don't see a concern for me with my kids, and they're on there, a fair bit.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. One thing that I came to yesterday, I was thinking about this because I heard an ad for this AI service that will help you essentially, well, will essentially not just help you, will essentially create your resume.
Sure.
You prompt it a little bit, like it'll prompt you with a couple of different questions, and it'll come up with this like perfect resume. And I was thinking about that. I was like, oh, that's really interesting from the standpoint of an employer, as me as an employer. Because I remember last time we hired somebody, actually, well, over time, what we used to do when we hired somebody for our office, for my chiropractic practice, is that we would have people in our ad, it would say, bring in your resume. Actually, no, I wouldn't even have people bring in a resume because I didn't care. I just wanted to meet people. So like come into the office between the hours of 3 and 6. We had, and then we would set up like a group interview where people would come in person, where I'd do a little talk about, who we are and what our practice stands for and our philosophy on health and things like that. And saw how people interacted with each other, because that's what the main goal of hiring somebody would be to be the kind of the front facing person in the office, that they would be the kind of the first impression that people would get when they either call the office or things like that. Now things have shifted that we don't do that anymore. But so we get, and there's these services like Indeed and things like that, where the different websites where you can where people look at, like, there's like a job postings and things like that. People can send their resumes in. So all of a sudden we're getting all these resumes, and I know nothing about these people. Everything kind of just looks the same, and so we get to talking to people on the phone, and that's when we kind of get to start to see, because for a lot of times people, the first interaction with our office will be on the phone. So we want to see, hey, how are you on the phone? How can you talk to people? All that sort of thing. And already the resumes kind of seem like it's just a bunch of noise to me.
Yeah.
We'll get hundreds of resumes because it's so easy. So everyone's just applying for everything,
Sure.
If they're looking for work, they're just applying for whatever. And I can then also see, oh yeah, people who have these kind of templated cover letters where I'm like, yeah, I know. Okay, it looks like you put in some effort because you wrote a cover letter, but you know nothing about my business. It's all super generic. But
Right.
soon it'll be super targeted.
Sure.
But it won't just be that one person, it'll be everybody. So everybody's cover letter, everybody's resume is going to be super targeted and super adapted to my business. So great. That's great for the person. Oh, you look like you kind of did some work, but you didn't. And so everybody, so now all of this just becomes noise. And so what becomes the signal? It becomes the person that I can actually see, like, because I'll be looking at these resumes. It's like, I don't know. Is this, I'll be looking at it as from the standpoint of an employer or as just
Yeah.
as a person. I'll be looking at this going, well, is this who this person really is?
Sure.
Is this what
Sounds
they're really
so
all
good,
about?
right? Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Because I don't know, because likely AI had something to do with this. So who is this person really?
Sure.
And we're getting to the point where it's not just people's resumes, it's people's writing online, it's people's emails. Like now with the new updates, I don't even have to read my emails. I can get a summary. I can also get it to write back. So it's like we're just having all these AIs talk to AIs now. It's like I'm
Right.
taken out of the whole equation. And that's not just for the business stuff, but that can be for our content, like our marketing, our all that stuff. And so I think one of the opportunities, and I think one of the things that people will be craving, because the next question is going to be like, is this really real? Is what I'm looking at really real?
Yeah.
And
Are
so
we real right now?
what's that?
We could be two bots right now talking too.
We could potentially, yeah. But that people, I think what it might do, or I'm hoping, it's going to begin to shift the cravings of people and the desires of people away from like just this having to ask the question, like, is this really real? And actually have, like, they're going to be craving real connection. And that comes through in, real conversations like this. Be people able to see my face and that it's not some curated, filtered thing. It's not perfect. It's not, but it's just, it's real. Like if it feels real, like we're going to be looking for that feeling of real, like it's that feeling of connection.
I
And
hear you.
in social media, in anything, I think that's what's going to be the more popular thing, because that's what we're all really craving is connection. Why we go on these things in the first place is not because for anything other than we want to feel like our life matters, that we matter, that we connect, we love, we are loved, all of those things. Like that's why we do it. And it's going to get there's going to be so much noise out there because it's so much easier to create content,
Yeah.
to create a filter of this is who I am, and I can look how perfectly I can speak, and look how perfectly I
However
can
you
put
wanna
this
look.
resume together, and look at this great website that I put together.
For
But
sure.
it won't be you.
It's all surface. Yeah. We should call this dad rants.
Dad rants. No, but I think I'm hopeful for our kids, and that's like, say, my younger kids especially, like this is the world they're coming into. So yeah, it's really messy right now, but I think the thing that will come, there's great upside to it. So a lot of great things that can come from it. In that, what is going to emerge is really this idea that any one of us, every one of us, whether we're the top behavioral scientist, studying human psychology and irrigation and influence and persuasion, to the person who knows nothing, those same people all want the same thing. Every single person on this earth wants the same thing. We want to love and we want to be loved. We want to feel like we matter. We want to feel like we're enough. We want to feel like we make a difference in our own lives and in someone else's life.
Yeah. Well, I believe so. I agree with you. Deep down, there's a I agree. I think deep down there's a, evolutionary or intrinsic desire for that, right? Like babies, right? They first come in this world and they're just like, love me. And scientifically they need to be loved for them to thrive, right? Like you can look at the data that suggests and shows babies aren't given love and affection when they first born. They will actually wither, and like it's not a good situation, right?
Yeah.
Love Sense was a really good book on the science of love and how important it is. So I agree with that. But the other part of it that we started talking about, I think on the so what I'm hearing you say is yes, with all of this mass-produced content that can be very well now produced with the help of AI and super tailored, and we honestly could be video, AI people. You can now create an avatar that looks just like you, and you can create your voice, and like this could be produced, right? And you can now create podcasts with Google Notebook LM that sounds like two humans having a podcast. You could upload like a ridiculous amount of content right now that seems like it's real.
Hmm.
And so that could create what I'm hearing you say, that could create a starvation and a scarcity of real, of authenticity, of actual human to human connection, right? Is that what I'm hearing?
Hmm. Well, I'm saying not it could. It is for me. I know it is for me,
Okay. All right.
and I know that I'm not much different than I'm not. I don't feel like I'm an outlier when it comes to that.
Sure. So I feel like there's a couple things. One is we should probably do some of our podcasts in person then.
Yeah.
Second of all, um, I think it has also a way to go two ways though with that. Is A, yes, creating more and more of a hunger because we are starved for real connection. So I think that's real for a lot of people like yourself, and I can say that for me too, is I do like having that. And I can see the dark side though with social media and all this content is it can send people the other way. Where sure, deep down they might want that, but they can get, I think that one of the dangers of these algorithms, if people don't know, is it can create like numbness. It can create a
Hmm.
significant lack of empathy. It can create a desire to not connect. Because if you're seeing, like I've had these conversations with people, they're like, oh my God, the world is screwed. Like, oh my God, look at all the stuff that's happening. Oh my, like they're overwhelmed. Their sensory systems, their nervous systems are overwhelmed because we do have access to like all time, right? Everything
Hmm.
if you want to know what's going on in any country right now, you can go and find it out.
Hmm.
You can hear it from people that are on the ground. You can watch I mean, you can get the worst of what's happening in the world in your fingertips by doing this. And that can be totally overloading for a lot of people's nervous systems, right? I mean, you see this probably all the time in your practice. So
Hmm.
that is a danger because now you become, you just like, where do you go with that? If you don't have the capacity to want to understand that or can understand it or shut it off and focus on other things in this world, if you allow yourself to absorb the content of the worst things that are happening in the world at any single time or in all corners of the world, well, naturally, as a coping mechanism, you're going to start to shut down. And so that you're going to want to have less connection because you're like, oh my God, the world's screwed. People are bad. You know what I mean? So I can
Hmm.
see it going the other way with a lot of people. And I know there's lots of stats on depression and all these things that are coming because we don't have perhaps the awareness, some people, or the discipline to go, whoa, that's too much. Like, I don't
Hmm.
need to be involved in all these conversations about the worst things that are happening everywhere all the time. So
Right.
I do think that there's that piece of things where it is creating less connection if people aren't careful and are going into a state of just overwhelm and numbness and coping and.
Hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. Oh my gosh.
So I don't know, kids. Under you know, I think social media can be great. I think it has an ability, same with this technology. I think it has an ability to connect. I mean, look at us, right? Thanks to this technology, you and I get to connect every week for an hour. We get to share this content with anyone around the world that wants to. It's a choice, and everyone has the ability at the end of the day to choose what they want to watch, right? And what they want to put in their brains. I mean, that's, I know, a big part of Tony's work is like stand at the guard of your mind. Like
Hmm.
you get to choose what goes in here, what goes in here, what goes in here. Like that stops with you and me. So for our kids, yes, at a certain age, they're not totally aware that they need to be the guard of their mind. They're just everything's going in, right? They're a full-on sponge. They're like, okay, great, this is what the world's like. Everything goes in. So at that age, is that a good idea to give them TikTok and YouTube and all this kind of stuff? No. But there is an age where they start to have the discipline and awareness to go, oh, I do get to be the guardian of what goes into my system here. And I do get to think what I want to think. And I do have my
Mm-hmm.
own values and I do have my own opinions. So whatever age that is for whichever kid you have, then that's the point at which I'm okay with them starting to get access to some of this stuff with the education awareness of how it works. And at least in my own household, I don't see a problem, right? My kids take very good care of themselves. They're like are my eldest meal prep this entire week, her lunches and her breakfasts. She's cooked dinner for not just herself, but for me. She cooked the other day. She's playing, on a volleyball team at the highest level she can. She's doing well in school except for one subject. I mean, and she's got great friends. I can have a wonderful conversation with. Like, I don't see a problem, so I'm not going to create one.
Mm-hmm.
And same with my son. He's on there a bit. He games. It's very social for him. He's connecting with his friends. But I have a great experience with him. Other people do. He's one of the top skiers in our province. Like, I don't see a problem. So, am I going to say, no, you can only go on from here to here and you can only go on this and I'm going to create a bunch of rules unnecessarily? Personally, I don't know, but
Right.
that's just me.
Yeah, and I guess to be what I'm hearing is that to get to that, because like my kids are still on the
Mm,
young end of even knowing what any of that stuff is yet. They're
sure.
starting to understand what it is. They don't understand how to interact or how to engage or that they would want to even. But it's not curating is not the right word, but it's just really understanding our kids, being involved
Yes.
with our kids' lives to know what's going on, who they are, what their desires are, what their passions are, what their limitations are. And the more that we're connected to them, the more that they're able to be open with us, meaning the more that we're able to be open with them, the more that we're able to be real and vulnerable and authentic and show up in our own leadership. That means that we'll be able to help our kids through that. Like I always come back
Yeah.
to this this funny thing that happened when I was a kid, that we were sitting around the kitchen table and me and my brothers and my sister were like all horsing around on the table, and one of us hit the other one or something like that, and my mom went and smacked my brother on the shoulder and she said, "Don't hit." And we all busted out laughing, the whole family. And now it's whatever, it's 30 some years later, we still use that as a joke, like an inside joke in our family, but also as a lesson, like like how funny that she did the very thing that she was telling us not to do, and we saw right through it.
Right.
So if we want someone to
Right.
do something, like don't be the perpetrator of the thing that you're trying to get people not to do. Like you need to
Yeah,
stand in
right.
your own
We've talked about
leadership.
that a
You need
lot
to,
about,
yeah,
yeah, be the example, right? Am I sitting there on the couch doing this and I've taught them that that's what people do? That, oh, that's what dad and mom do. They sit on their phone scrolling aimlessly all day, so why shouldn't I? Yeah, totally, right? Like that's we got to be we got to be the example for them. We can't just tell them, yeah, we can't hit them and tell them not to hit other people. Um, yeah, I had one other thought, but it just escaped my head. Um, yeah.
yeah. I had a powerful experience the other day. Well, this is a few weeks ago now, but my oldest one is getting to the point where, like, when I'm on my phone and she's around, she'll start asking, "What are you looking at? What are you looking at? What are you reading? What's the video you're
Right.
looking at?" If she sees that I'm looking at a video, and she came up to me, she just came out of the bath and she was putting on her PJs. I was lying in our bed just scrolling through X, and it was a video of some guy. It was so bad. It was a video of some guy getting trampled by an elephant. It was horrendous. It was, oh my gosh. And right at that very moment, my daughter walks in. She's like, "What are you looking at?" And I was like, "Oh shit." And that was like, I remember at that moment, like, no, I can't be doing this. This is so stupid. Why am I doing it? But now I have to explain to her, or not explain to her because she didn't see it. And I didn't tell her the truth. I was like, oh, I was just watching a video of an elephant. And then I was like, oh my God. But then I was like, no, okay, I got to stop this. This is so stupid.
Yeah, right. Like, well, that was on X, right? Well, that algorithm doesn't sound any better. Come
No.
on, Elon. Um, well, I know now. I remember back to what you were saying, right? It's like, no, they're the problem, not us, right? How, come on, that's our entire thing. Does Zuckerberg have kids?
Yeah,
I
his
think he
two
does.
kids, I think.
Yes. Okay, good. So we should have them on here. Let's talk. Let's talk dad talk.
Yeah.
So you got to be able to look at yourself first, though. Like, are you truly acting with integrity before you go and point fingers at somebody else and say that they're the problem? Do you know what I mean? Like that,
Right.
that's fundamentally what this show has been about from the beginning is I can't go and say they're doing this and I have a problem with it if I'm doing the exact same thing. I mean, I can't do that, right? That is a complete lack of integrity, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I think
Oh,
you can say that. I don't
you
think it
could,
will
sure. So you,
get the result that you're looking for,
I just think
especially
it's
long term.
yes. Yeah, I just think really is everyone that's pointing fingers truly have they truly taken care of their own house? You know, are they actually doing not doing the thing they're telling other people that they anyways, do you know what I mean? Like just be or yeah, we should have them on here one day. Let's have a little chat about integrity and have we really are we really doing our best here first and foremost? Are we, you know, are these companies protecting people's data and not selling it to other people? Are they truly tuning their algorithm for, you know, education and empowering? And no. And yet we have a problem with those guys because they're not here. They're over there and they look different than us and blah, blah, blah. The other thing I was just going to add, now I remembered, is what you said. Like, yes, just pay attention to your kids, be present with them, check out their behavior, watch what they're watching. That was the other thing is don't just give them a phone, watch what they're watching. And because that's, you know, even with my 7-year-old, she's gotten on a YouTube with some of her friends because then her friends are like, oh, check out this. And they're on there. And I'm like, okay, let me watch this, girls. And I've educated her in terms of like, some of this content isn't good for you. It's like junk food. Like watch them. They're just like some of these shows, right? These kids and the moms that are on there and the dads, they're just yelling. Like they're so animated to try and get people's attention. But it's not, it's so ridiculous. And they're shouting, and then you could just see her like, she's like overly stimulated by this content. I'm like, sorry, that's like sugar. Okay. That show you're not allowed to watch. Maybe when you're older. Right now, no. Can we go back down to YouTube Kids, please? And we're gonna find some stuff that's far, you know, far calmer, far more educational, far still interesting. I mean, there's billions of hours of content out there. You don't need to watch this stuff, but
Hmm.
yeah, like for me, it's so important to watch what they watch because you know any of these things are slippery. Like YouTube's no different. They can get onto all kinds of weird stuff.
Hmm.
So yeah, but I just think it comes back to one of the main things we've always said is just be present, be committed, be with them, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, man. All
Be the
right.
example. This was the rant show. I didn't even get to rant about crypto. That'll be next week.
See you next week. I love it, man.
Yeah, maybe we
All
should have a
right.
dad social network, and then
Yeah.
we can put our ethics and values in there, and no screaming, and no disempowering content, and no car crashes, and no elephants stampeding people. And do
Just
we
a lot of
really need
like
to see that stuff?
steak porn
For
and
food,
yeah, just
grilling
like
a steak
big
like that
giant
sizzle,
pieces of steak and beef and
sports highlights. Yeah. But do we really need to see like who do like should videos of people being stampeded by an elephant need to be on there period? Like maybe Chinese is good. Maybe we should be restricting some of that content. I don't know.
yeah,
I mean, you've seen the stuff about the rise and the fall of the Ray Dalio's content about like the Chinese empire, like as the next superpower. Like it may be coming. Like whether we like it or not, the American empire is on the decline. Like that's what the data says. I'm not Ray Dalio is one of the top investors in the world. Like I'm not making this stuff up.
yeah.
So
Well,
whether
he's
we
not the
like it
only
or
one that's
not,
saying that. Yeah.
Yeah, whether we like it or not, we might want to, and temporarily trying to ban one of their social media platforms, in my opinion, isn't the answer.
Hmm.
Because there's another one that people have now migrated to. I can't remember what it's called, the Red Book or something like this.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's like the number one app right now.
Yeah. But it's like all in Chinese, so people are just still trying to figure, like they'll go on it even they have no idea what it's saying. Like just
Right.
put your information in here, sign these terms of you. But who reads the terms of service anyways? And on any platform, I don't know. I just think it's ironic to me how similar it is to something that in my own story, in my own heritage, got experienced 83 years ago. And here we are doing it all over again, potentially, maybe.
Yeah, man. Fascinating. All right, dude. Well, we'll continue the rant next
Okay,
week.
dad rants.
Tune in next week.
All right.
See what Ryan has
Thanks,
to
bro.
say. See you later,
You went on
everybody.
your own. You had your own fair share of rants there.
Oh,
We
yeah,
were
yeah,
both,
yeah.
yeah,
Oh, yeah. Egg me
ranting.
on. I like it. I appreciate it. All right. See you, everybody.
All right. Yeah. Have a great day.